Okay, good afternoon, everyone. How is everyone this afternoon? We hope that you guys, doing well for today's session. And thank you, guests from Thailand and overseas from joining us in another activity of PSU Open Mobility 2021 today. We wish this would be a productive moment for us all to exchange ideas. And today, our invited speaker will cover the topics of pathway to advanced second language competence. However, this activity will not be made possible without the kind contribution of our moderator. I would like to thank Assistant Professor Dr. Suraya Sulaiman for running the show today. As a brief introduction, Assistant Professor Dr. Sulaiman is a lecturer and a committee of the academic board at the English section, Prince of Songkhla University, Pattani campus, Thailand. She obtained her PhD in English Literary Studies from International Islamic University, Malaysia. And prior to that, she received her master's in comparative literature and bachelor's in English from Chulalongkorn University, Thailand. Yes, and her research interests include post-colonial literature, diaspora literature, comparative literature, and English language teaching. In addition, she has organized several English training programs, workshops, and English camps to empower English language teaching and learning for teachers and students in the southern region of Thailand. Without further ado, everyone, please welcome Assistant Professor Dr. Sulaiman.
Hello, everyone. Sawadee-ka. And Assalamualaikum and Sawadee Yam-bai ka. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our webinar under PSU Open Mobility 2021. And thank you very much, Dr. Yusuf, our very, very active program manager, for your kind introduction. Actually, we have been working together, and Dr. Yusuf is one who has introduced so many new activities to our department. So this is my pleasure to be working with him today. And yes, and what we are expecting today is, of course, our beloved Dr. Willy, which you have got so many fans. I'm not sure whether everyone is here already, but we see in the list of the registration that are at least from 12 countries altogether. Yes. Okay. So. Yeah, my name is Suraya, and then it's very honor for me to be the moderator for today's talk by Dr. Willy, one of the most anticipated speakers in our webinars, because this is one of our familiar faces. We have seen you actually in plenary sessions, and if you went to Bangkok in 2019. You would have met him or would have at least participated in his talk, right? Dr. Willy in Bangkok in 2019, right?
That is correct, yes.
Yeah, okay. So maybe I would like to also welcome all our participants. Actually, in my list, it's from 12 countries altogether. So for the record of our recording, I would like to just address those who have already registered for our event today. So they are from like Bhutan. I'm not sure whether he or she is here already. China, Indonesia, Myanmar, the Philippines, Scotland, South Korea, Sri Lanka, Turkey, Uzbekistan, Vietnam, and also, of course, from Thailand. So welcome everyone to our session today. And today's webinar is the topic, as Dr. Yusuf has mentioned, is pathways to advanced second language competence, which I think is one of the favorite topics for us, especially for language learner, because one of our goals is, of course, to achieve the advanced level. And many of us, me included, I used to be in that, what do we call the status that we try to get from the intermediate level to the advanced level. So I think today, Dr. Willy will be helping us get through that state for especially for our students who are struggling to get from the intermediate to the advanced level. So maybe we can have a lot of sharing from our speaker today. Okay, so I'm not sure whether our speaker needs any introduction, but for the benefit of recording, I would like to give a brief introduction of our speaker today. Dr. Willy Adrian Renandya is a language teacher educator with extensive teaching experience in Asia. He currently teaches applied linguistic courses at the National Institute of Education and Nanyang Technological University, Singapore. And he is frequently attended plenary speaker at ELT international conferences. And he has published extensively in the area of second language education. His publications include language teaching methodologies and anthropology of current practice. I think some of you may have used his book as a reference. And student-centered cooperative learning, 2019. And lately, this is the most recent one. He has the book chapter in the called Growing Our Research Impact in 2020. So he maintains a large language teacher professional development forum called Teacher Voices, which can be found on Facebook. And I have also applied to that platform, and was very wonderful to see a lot of people sharing a lot of ideas there. And he also have a website called Willy's ELT Corner. So I think this is very one of the very exciting platform that we can go and learn from our beloved Dr. Willy. So now, without further ado, please welcome our special guest today, Dr. Willy Adrian Renandya.
Clap, 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 clap. Thank you.
With a big round of applause. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you very much, everyone.
Yeah.
It's a pleasure for me to be here. This is like 2 o'clock in the afternoon in Singapore. And I think it's 1 p.m., 1+ in Thailand. It's a very good time. It's a very good time for us to, have a chat, have a conversation about an important topic that I'll be sharing with you. And that is how we can help our students to become more proficient in their English language achievement. I think you know that in many places, many of our EFL students in particular, except for the Philippines. The Philippines are way, quite advanced. In many places where English is taught and learned as a foreign language, I think you will agree with me that the majority of our students are still at the level below our expectations, actually. I think they can do much better than they are currently doing. And today I'm going to share with you some of the ideas that I've learned from a lot of observations, a lot of discussions with very experienced scholars and also very experienced teachers in terms of how we can help our students to become better speakers, to become better writers, to become more fluent readers, and also to become more fluent comprehenders as well. But before I start, let me just say 1 or 2 sentences about my university. The name of my university is Nanyang Technological University. It's a beautiful place. It's a very good university located in Singapore. The name is Nanyang Technological University. And I belong to the School of Education. And locally, it's called the National Institute of Education, not School of Education, not Faculty of Education, but it's called the National Institute of Education. This is the only place for people to come and study if they want to become a teacher in Singapore. They have to take, the bachelor's program, or sometimes the master's program before they can start teaching in Singapore schools. For those of you who are planning to study overseas, If you have some money, or if you don't have money, you can apply for scholarships from your government. And you may consider coming to my university, my School of Education, to do your master's or to do your doctorate degrees with us. I'm hoping to see some of you in the not too distant future, maybe next year, maybe the year after. Singapore is a very, very nice place, and it's very near Malaysia, it's very near Thailand, it's very near the Philippines, and it's very near from Indonesia as well. Ladies and gentlemen, if you can, please have your audio and video, your video in particular on throughout my presentation, so that I can have a chat. I can have a conversation with you. Yeah, I think that is one way we can have a bit more of an interaction, so that will help me to stay awake. And that will also help you to stay awake during my presentation, okay? Excellent. Now, let me begin by sharing with you what used to be the case. Like 20 years ago or 30 years ago, there was a lot of discussion about, things that we need to do, things that teachers need to do in order to help our students become proficient in English or in whatever language they are learning. Yeah, but the ideas are so widespread, and very often the ideas are, were so different, and people were in so much disagreement with each other. It was difficult actually for people, for teachers, in the classroom to really understand what was happening and to actually make use of some ideas that, often became very, very difficult. But over the years, I think a lot of people, there's a lot of research, there's a lot of experts that have sort of come together. And there's still some disagreement here and there, but largely they have, sort of have a basic agreement in terms of things, factors, variables that are so important in language education, in shaping, in helping our students develop a higher level of proficiency in the English language. Now, here are some examples, some examples of what researchers, scholars used to have a, big disagreement, used to have a big debates about whether we should be teaching language as knowledge or as ability, whether we should be teaching like grammar rules, for example, or linguistic rules, or whether we should be focusing more on helping students to develop the actual ability of using the language for communication. So there's a big, debate back then. But I think we now understand better. We now understand that both are important, but the exception is that maybe a little bit of knowledge, that's the key thing, and more focus on ability. And that is one theme that I will be sharing with you throughout my presentation. Yes, knowledge is important, but I think we should not spend too much time. What is happening today in many language classes is that we tend to teach, let me correct that, we tend to over-teach. How do you say that in Thai? Over-teaching. Over-teach. I think we teach too much. Yeah, that's the word. We over-teach. We teach too much knowledge to our students. Yeah, but I think teaching a little bit of knowledge can be useful, but too much knowledge is not going to be useful in helping our students develop a kind of language proficiency that we expect them to develop. The second area, which is very interesting, is whether we should be teaching in the classroom, whether we should only be using English throughout, like 24 hours a day in the classroom, or whether we should allow the students to use whatever language resources or linguistic resources that they have, because many of our students come to our class and they already speak like, the Northern Thai, the Southern Thai, and a little bit of French maybe, and a little bit of the local dialect. Or whether we should limit ourselves to, okay, in my class, I will only be using English and the students should only be using English. I don't think that is the case now. I think people are more open-minded. They understand the nature of learning better. So yes, monolingualism is okay, but largely I think we should encourage teachers and students to make use of whatever linguistic resources that are available in order to support language learning in the classroom. The next one is this. And the debate is still going on between native speakers and non-native speakers. Tuna, do you consider yourself a native speaker of English or a non-native speaker of English?
I don't know, but I think
You don't know.
I think no.
Yes, there's been a lot of debate basically whether native speakers are better language teachers or non-native speakers are better language teachers, or whether they should be working together. I think now we understand better. It doesn't matter whether you're a native speaker, it doesn't matter whether you are non-native speakers, as long as you are a good language teacher, that should be, the way it is. Yeah, so ask yourself whether you are a good, proficient, competent, professionally competent language teacher. I think that is more important than all this big debate about native speakers and non-native speakers. In fact, the term non-native speakers are now being avoided. So instead of non-native speakers, Suraya, people will call you as a bilingual speaker or a multilingual speaker.
Yeah.
So I am a multilingual speaker. Yeah, because I speak several languages, just like many of you here in the audience. Another important thing that was the focus of contention and discussion and debate was whether we should focus more on assessment of learning or assessment for learning. I think now we understand both are important, but perhaps with more emphasis, with more focus on the second one. The second one is assessment for learning, and that has a lot of implication. Ajahn Yusuf, what is assessment for learning? It's not a test for you, okay? Assessment for learning, right? That's a very interesting term, isn't it? Testing for learning. Does anyone have any thought on this issue? Assessment for learning. This is the kind of assessment that supports learning. This is the kind of assessment that should not frighten our students. The kind of assessment that will actually guide our students in understanding where they are in relation to where they want to be at some future point. So the second one is increasingly being embraced by teachers. Yes, we can give a big test at the end of the semester, yes. Or at the end of the year, yes, we can give a big test, that is assessment of learning. But along the way, I think we should be using, the other type of assessment, also known as formative assessment, actually, yeah, or process-oriented assessment, to help our students to develop their language proficiency. The next one is input and output. Is input important or is output more important? There was a big discussion, a big debate in the old days. On the one hand, people say that, yes, input is the most important thing, output is not important. And then somebody came into the picture and said, no, input is not that important. The most important thing is producing the language. Output is more important. I think we have become wiser now, Suraya, right? We have become wiser. I think we know better now that both are important, but both are important in different ways. I think that is what makes it important for us to understand. They are important in different ways, and they are important at different stage of learning. This is another point that I will highlight in my presentation later. Again, the last one is about method. People are looking for the best method. And in the past, we were, encouraged to adopt one single method for teaching English, for teaching a language, whether it's audiolingual, whether it's communicative language teaching approach. But, today, I think we know better that we can't really make use of a method only in the classroom. We need to adopt a variety of methods, the kind of methods that will help our students, that will help different groups of students in our classroom to follow, to understand what is going on in the classroom. So that was in the past, yeah? Today, I think we are seeing a convergence instead of divergence of ideas, more, not entirely convergent, but more convergent thinking, more convergent ideas about what needs to be done or what can be done. What are some of the big principles that people tend to agree rather than disagree? And today, that's what I'm going to share with you. I'm going to share with you 8 principles. Now, each principle is represented by one letter in the word flamingos. Ajahn Soraya, what is flamingo in Thai? It's a bird.
We use the word, flamingo.
Do you call it flamingo? Amy,
Yes.
Ajahn Amy? Same word.
It's flamingo. Also flamingo, yes.
Okay, can you do flamingo dance?
Oh, that's difficult.
Yeah, it's a very dynamic kind of dance, very popular.
Correct, yes,
Maybe not in
yes.
the Philippines, but in Latin America.
Latin America,
Yes,
correct.
I think if you are a woman, if you are young, you need to know how to dance, the flamingo way. Otherwise, it will be difficult for you to socialize with other, people in your country. Okay, so flamingos, yeah. So the key takeaway then is for you to remember the word flamingo, and then you're fine, because that's what I'm going to discuss with you. The first letter in flamingos is F, right? And F stands for fluency, and that is what I want to stress as a first principle. Fluency. So the key question for us to consider is this: do you want to help your student to become fluent language users? Please say yes.
Absolutely, yes.
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 Very good. Please don't say no. I mean, that's
Yes,
our job,
definitely.
isn't it? Our
Yeah.
job is to help our students to become fluent language users. But the big question for us to consider, to think about is this: have you done a good job? Have you done enough in helping your students develop that fluency, which is the target, which is the goal of your teaching, right? It's a rhetorical question. I think we're going to discuss this together. But first off, let us try to examine our practices, the way we teach in the classroom. Observations and opinions by experts, like this person is really an expert, and I really admire this person. The name is Paul Nation from New Zealand. I hope you will be able to invite him to give a presentation or to give a talk. He comes to Thailand very often. I think his wife is a Thai lady. So if you have a Thai name and if you invite him, he will be very happy to say yes, I'll come and give a presentation. It's a very, very nice, ELT expert. And this is what he says. Yeah, I think you need to reflect on your own practices, whether and to what extent you have done a good job in helping your students develop fluency. What he says is this: fluency has been neglected. Yeah, if you walk into the classroom, day number 1, you will see a teacher presenting a new teaching item, a new teaching point, right? If you come and visit the class the next day, another new teaching point, right? 1 week later, another new teaching point. Another week later, another new teaching point. Is that a bad thing? No, it's not a bad thing. But but you should also provide students with a lot of opportunities to learn, relearn, and practice what they have just learned from you. If not, what happens? They forget. If not, when they try to use it, it will be very difficult for them to retrieve, to take out, to recall, to retrieve whatever they have learned from you the day before or the week before. In other words, there's not enough recycling. There's not enough repetition of the items, whatever items this is, that you have taught your students. In other words, in a very simple word, minimal fluency practice. For people, this is very important, yeah? I think you need to reflect on this issue. You need to actually believe that this is really what is often happening in many language classrooms. Very minimal fluency practice. Now, if you look at this, how skill is learned, how skill is acquired in other areas like sports, for example, or music or whatever. And you will understand very quickly that the guy here on the left-hand side is doing a lot of practice. This is what I call fluency practice. Fluency practice is defined as doing something that you are already good at.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's the definition. Practicing what you already know so that you become better at it. What better here means so that you become fluent, so that you find it easy to do things that you have learned, so that you can do it quickly, so that you can do it effortlessly. Very important in language learning, effortless. If it is effortful, then it's very clear that you are struggling. Yeah, that you are struggling and you are showing signs of disfluency. I think this is very easy to see happening in your classroom, in my classroom as well, in many classrooms in Asia, that the students are not very fluent because they like practice. They have not been given a lot of opportunities to practice what they have already learned. So they are never good at anything, basically, because they keep on learning new things, week 1, week 2, week 3, and all the way until they finish their studies. In other words, the key point here from Paul Nation and from me and from other people is this: practice, practice, practice. The key thing is what kind of practice? Grammar drills, that is practice. Is that the kind of practice that we want our students to be able to do? Not really, because if you give students grammar drills, they become fluent, they become good at doing grammar drills. Remember that. And that's not what we want to, be able to do. That's not what we want our students to be able to do, yeah? If you give students a lot of grammar drills and grammar practice, they become very good at doing it. So not surprisingly, many of our students are very good at passing examinations that require students to, to sort of retrieve, recall all the grammatical rules that they have been drilled throughout their life. The drill, and some people say, Suraya, I think you're going to like it, the drill and kill approach to language learning. Drill and kill. Really, you are killing their motivation, you are killing their interest, you are killing their ability to develop their fluency. So what has been suggested actually is this meaningful, important thing to remember, meaningful and enjoyable practice of listening, reading, speaking, and writing. So think about this. Think about the extent to which you have done this in your own teaching practices. Meaningful reading, meaningful listening. Watching movie actually is an excellent, and very meaningful practice for our students, yeah? But not any kind of movies. Remember, not any kind of movies. I'm going to share with you the kind of movies that are useful for language learning purposes. Okay, so that's the first one. First one is fluency. The second letter in flamingos is, the second letter is L, yeah? Now L here stands for lexis. Lexis is just a fancy word for vocabulary. Lexis. This is another very important dimension of language learning. For some reason, people, teachers, language teachers, whether in the Philippines, in Thailand, and in many other places, they focus more on grammar. This is very, very interesting to me. They spend a lot of time teaching grammar and reteaching grammar. So every year, the students get to learn grammar from you. And after 6 years, do they learn the grammar that you have taught them? Not really. And yet, we don't learn from our experience. Yeah, the following year, we will teach grammar again. Teach grammar again. I think today, one of the important takeaway today is this, that vocabulary is more important than grammar. When I say more important, it doesn't mean that grammar is not important. Grammar is important in a certain way. At the very basic level, yes, teach them some grammar. The key word is some grammar, but not too much. do not overteach. Faiza, what is overteach again, Faiza, in Thai?
ยัดเยียดสอนจนมากเกินไป
Yes.
ค่ะอาจารย์
That's the one, yes. So don't overteach grammar. Yeah, instead focus more on vocabulary. So Lexis. Now here is some support, if you like. The literature, the professional literature that I've come across include this too. Without grammar, very little can be conveyed. Without vocabulary, nothing can be conveyed. I think it's exaggerate. It's an exaggeration. But the point is that vocabulary actually is very, very important, more important than grammar. But the second point, the second quote is even more insightful, at least to me. Yeah, and Ajahn Suraya, you are going to read this for me, or for everyone here. Language ability.
Language ability is to quite a large extent a function of vocabulary size.
Yes, can you translate that in simple language? Sorry, I'm giving you a quiz, yeah? Can you say that in a very simple language? You can say it in Thai first, and then Ajahn Faiza will get it translated into English. Yeah, what does it mean? Because academic people usually write in a very difficult language like this one. I don't. You know, you will, you know, if you read my paper of my, you know, book or my book chapter, you'll find that my writing is very, very simple, very transparent. Like this one, what does it mean actually? What does it mean?
To put it more simple, I think
Yeah.
vocabulary.
Yeah,
the vocabulary is very important part in your language ability.
Absolutely, yes. Let me say it in this way. It's even more simple than that. A bit longer though. If you want to speak well, you need vocabulary. If you want to write well, you need vocabulary. If you want to read and listen well, you need vocabulary. That's what it says actually. Yeah. So vocabulary is a factor that influences your ability, your language ability, your ability to communicate using the language, reading, listening, writing, and speaking. Now, here is an additional piece of information that is extremely important because it is telling you how important vocabulary is, for example, in the context of reading. Look at this. Text comprehension, your ability to read with comprehension, depends heavily, another very important word, depends heavily on detailed knowledge of most of the words in a text. And we have to translate the word most into something that is more tangible. What is most? Ajahn Yusuf, what is most? If you read a piece of passage, newspaper article from New York Times, for example, and the quote here says that you need to know most of the words. How many of the words that you need to know from the text? Most. What does most mean?
My colleagues tell me that it's 90%.
90%. Yes? All of you agree, 90%? 90%?
Yes.
Yes?
Yes.
Yeah, 90%. Amy, 90%?
Yes.
Ajahn Faiza, 90%?
Yes, sir.
Ajahn Eka does not agree with you. Ajahn Eka, please say 95 to 98%.
Oh, someone mentioned 70%, sir.
Oh, 70% is a disastrous.
Yeah.
Yeah, disastrous. Even reading in your own language. Let me say this very carefully. Read, you know, from, I don't know, Bangkok Times in Thai. Yeah. And suppose you don't know like 20% of the words. 20% of the Thai words that are used in that text. Do you think you'll be able to understand that? No, no way. The same thing, even worse with English, especially if you are learning English as a second or foreign language. Research tells us actually, this is after years and years of research, and this is supported by experience. You need to know 95 to 98% of the words. 98 is even better than 95. Don't take it for granted, you know, give it a try later at home. Yeah, read an English passage and delete like 5% of the words from the text and see if you can understand. Chances are you won't be able to understand very well. You may be able to understand. This is very tricky now. You may be able to understand because you already know a lot of words. Keep that in mind. Your students,
Yes.
on the other hand, do not know a lot of words. And because of that, they will be struggling a great deal if they can't recognize 5% of the words in that text. Of course, there are situations like, okay, if you know the topic really, really well, I think you can make a lot of guesses. You can make a lot of intelligent guesses using your prior knowledge, using your knowledge of the topic. But for most students, that doesn't happen all the time. And the kind of topical reading passages that we use, those are usually the kinds that the students do not have a lot of knowledge, do not have a lot of prior knowledge. Yeah? So remember, most here means 95 to 98%. Yeah, think about what we can do to help our students acquire, 98% of the words in a reading passage. Do we know? What do we know? What does this tell us? Here. Now, this is a rough estimate for most students in Thailand, students, not teachers, yeah? For you, I think you need to know a lot more than this one. For most students in Thailand, for most students in Indonesia, in Vietnam, in China, and in many other places, I would place it at about 3,000 to 5,000 words. Yeah. If you want to play safe, it's 8,000 words. Again, this is based on research by Paul Nation and other vocabulary researchers. You need to know 8,000 words. And happens that when you pick up a book from a bookshop, from a library, then there's a very good chance that you will be able to understand, the content with sufficient comprehension. But 3,000 to 5,000 is already, in my experience, is already good enough. 3,000 to 5,000 words, breadth in terms of the number of words. There's another dimension. Again, the other dimension is largely forgotten, largely neglected by people like you and me, by teachers, basically, high school teachers, prathom teachers, or what is the other one? Prathom and Matayum teachers. Yeah, here, this is the other dimension of vocabulary meaning. Now, this is largely missing in our teaching. Teaching the multiple meanings of words. The word may be very simple, but that word can have different meanings when they are used in different situations. That is what I mean by depth. The pragmatic use, whether that word is used in a certain context, but not in other situations, whether that word is considered impolite in one context and very good in other contexts, that's the pragmatic meaning of the words. And finally, also, depth allows students to explore, to use words more creatively. Again, keeping in mind that they don't need to know 10,000 words. They just need to know about 2,000 to 3,000 words. But if they know these words very well, I think they'll be able to use English more fluently and also with greater accuracy as well. Let me give you an example. I'm going to give you a very simple, easy example. Does anyone not know the meaning of the word give? Does anyone not know what the word means? If you ask your students, they will be able to tell you the meaning of the word give, right? Ajahn Yusuf, what is give in Thai?
Hai, mom hai.
Okay. Yeah, I think they know that word and they know the immediate translation of that word in the local language. Yep, that's fine. That is just one meaning of that word. I give you, you give me. So that direct give. I give you, you give me. Yeah. You give me a pat on my back, I give you a pat on your back. Very simple. Now here's another example of the word give, but this one, the word give is different, isn't it? I give you my word. It's not like, okay, I write 5 words and I give these 5 words to you. It's not, it doesn't have that meaning, right, Soraya?
Yes, sir.
Do you remember that person who gave his words to you once upon a time, but he
Once
never
upon a
kept
time.
his words?
Yes.
But he never kept his words. Yes. So what does give word means here? Give my word. What does it mean? Again, in Thai or in other languages? I give you my word.
Promise.
I promise. Yes, I promise. Okay. So you see here that the word give can have a slightly different meaning depending on what other words come together with that word. There's another one. She gave her all to save her child. She tried her best. Yeah.
Yeah.
Next one here. Have you tried this? If you're not feeling well, try giving it to your, to your friend. Soraya, if you're not feeling well, give your flu to Yusuf, for example. I'll give it a shot, and things like this. Frankly, dear, I don't give a. Please don't say it. It's a bad word, yeah. It's a four-letter word. The point again here is this. Very important for us teachers in the classroom. Have you ever thought about showing, explaining the meaning of the word give in this way? That the word give has multiple meanings, have different shades of meaning depending on how the word is used in context. The answer is probably no, probably not. Yeah. Now, even if we try, this is probably not possible. You can't really spend a lot of time doing this in the classroom. There are so many numerous meanings of words that we have, that we have in the English language. And this leads to my other principle a bit later. Yeah, but stay with it for the time being. Here is an example of a creative use of vocabulary. Keeping in mind, we are still looking at the word give. Okay. Faisal, I went to the doctor and he gave me 2 months to live. He gave me 2 months to live. What does it mean? Does it literally mean, okay, I give you 2 months to live? No, the doctor is telling you that, okay, you're going to die, right? You're going to die in 2 months' time. So the patient says, so I shot him. And the judge gave me 30 years. So this is an example of a very simple, easy word that people can use creatively. This is what I mean by creative use of the language. The language is so easy, but you can use that easy language to communicate a very interesting idea like this one. Please don't try shooting your doctors, okay? This is just an example. Okay, good. We are done with 2. We are still a long way to go. 6 more to go. The first one is, Soraya again, the first one is F stands for?
Sorry.
F stands for, are you
Let
still with
me
me?
help her out.
Fluency.
Very good, yes. Glad that you remember. Amy, L stands for Lexis, very easy.
My mic is off. It's like this, yes.
Yes, okay, so please stay awake and stay with me throughout, yeah, because we are going to learn together these 8 big ideas. The next one is A, flamingo, A. A here stands for 2 things, intensity, amount, and intensity. Amount refers to the number of times we meet our students, the number of lessons, the number of hours. Intensity means whether you are doing it in 1 year or whether you're doing it in 10 years. That's intensity. Duration. So this is very, very important for us language teachers to really, really appreciate because it has a lot of implication. Now, here is what I have learned, again from experience and also again from the professional literature. If you look at the left-hand side, typically students in Matayam and Pratom, this is in Thailand, and also in other countries like Japan, in Korea, and in many other places. Students usually total altogether for 6 years or so, they get about 1,000 hours of lessons, 1,000 hours of instructed English language lessons. In some countries, the kids get to spend more hours, but in some other countries, roughly about 1,000 hours. I'm not sure about Indonesia. It used to be 1,000 hours as well. After 6 years, yeah, from Matayam to Pratam, or from Pratam to Matayam. In Indonesia, it would be for SMP to SMA. The duration is 6 years. Now, this is what research becomes very useful for us to understand that 6 years is too long. Yeah. The amount is okay. 1,000 hours is enough. Ask as many people as you can. Use your own experience that 1,000 hours is more than enough to get the students to a level of proficiency that is considered more than sufficient. In CFR terms, it's probably at the B1 or B2 level. I think that's good enough for the majority of our students, B1 or B2 on CFR. But 6 years is too long. And because of that, we have not been able to reach that goal of helping our students develop that level of proficiency after 6 years of instruction. So the outcome, the learning outcome is likely to be moderate or even small. Now, this happens everywhere, not just in Thailand, but also in many, many EFL countries all over the world. So what I'm suggesting is this. Yeah. Again, as I said earlier on, the amount is okay, is enough, 1,000 hours, but I think we need to shorten the duration. I'm not sure if that is practical, but the theory says that the duration will have to be shorter, that the instruction, the teaching that we do will have to be more intensive. If that happens, then chances are higher that we may be able to achieve more optimal English language learning outcome. And then Suraya,
Yes, sir.
is it possible for Thailand to only spend 3 years of teaching English, but the number of hours within the 3 years is the same, like 1,000 hours? Ajahn Tuna is shaking his head vigorously.
I'm not sure because we spent so many years in Thailand, actually.
Exactly. Yeah. Usually it's about 6 years.
Too many
Yeah.
years.
Too
I
many
think
years. Yeah.
Sometimes it's somehow very difficult and very complicated because different learners might, have different backgrounds of linguistic proficiency. So
Yeah.
and I don't know, but one said to develop the language proficiency of students or learners, sometimes it's not about how long or how many hours, but it's about how often do the student practice themselves.
That is intensity. Exactly. I think that is another option that we can consider. Yeah. So 1,000 hours is kept constant. If 3 years is not possible, then keep it at 6 years, but increase the amount of practice. Is that possible? The answer is yes, it is possible.
Yeah.
But you have to work together. You have to, find innovative ways of providing more opportunities for the students to see the language, to experience the language, not just in the classroom, but also outside the classroom. So that is, yes. So that is one option that you can do.
I think as long as the learners practice themselves, keep practicing themselves. Some of them might get longer, some of them might get shorter in order to develop their language proficiency. But I'm quite agree with you.
Yes, I agree. So basically we are talking about the intensity. The intensity here refers to how often, refers to how much time that you're willing to spend on a daily basis. Yeah, Tuna, is it something that is possible, Tuna?
Can be done, sir.
Can be done, yeah?
Can be done.
Okay, can be done, yes. So later I'm going to share with you some of the ideas that are currently receiving a lot of interest, a lot of attention from researchers, as well as language educators from different places, yeah? But okay, the key point again here is this: 1,000 hours is enough. So never ask your ministry to, please give me more hours. No, 1,000 hours is enough. It's more than enough. It's the duration that can be a problem. Remember the forgetting curve? Yeah. people forget, basically. If you learn something and the duration is just way too long, you forget what you have learned before. So the attrition rate of what you learn is quite substantial.
So would you advocate starting later? Or if you, instead of starting at age, I don't know what, 8 or 9, then don't start learning English until you're 12 or 14. And put in three years of 7 hours a week rather than 6 years of 2 hours a week.
Yes, if that is doable, if that is possible, I think from a theoretical perspective, that is preferable. Yes. Although some people may argue that, hey, we should start at a younger age because young means good. I'm not very happy when people say young is good, because at my age, old is good. Not young is good.
I fully support that.
Yes.
But there is a danger if you do 3 years from age 4 till 7. Then by the time you go to university, you won't retain any of it. I don't know. Maybe if you are fluent by age 7, you will remain fluent for the rest of your life. That would be an interesting study.
Yes, good point. People are talking about acquiring language, but also extending and maintaining. So these are 3 things that we also need to. I think you made a very good point. Yes, what if we start early and then later on people forget? Well, it can happen. And our job actually is to help the students to continue to feel excited, to continue to feel motivated, to further extend and also maintain whatever language they have learned before. So the use it or lose it becomes relevant in our discussion just now. Yeah, but that's a good point. Just very briefly about the younger, the better. I think that was a very, very popular idea in the past. The idea that after a certain age, you can't really acquire a language really well. I think that has been criticized and that has been discredited. It doesn't matter when you start learning the language. If you are using, principles, ideas that I'm sharing with you today, actually, then there's no reason you cannot continue to learn a new language every year. Just imagine those people who are called polyglots. You have heard about polyglots, people who speak like 10 different languages or 20 different languages. How come they can continue to learn a new language every 2 years? I think that shows that our brains are very flexible. There's no limit to the number of languages that we can learn. We can continue to learn if we want to. I think that's the key thing. If we need to, if we want to. If the need and the desire is not there, then even learning one new language is going to be a big struggle. Okay, next one, which is what I just said about the need and the desire to learn. It's about motivation. The very, very important idea. As I said early on, we focus too much on teaching knowledge. We often focus too much on teaching skills, forgetting that without sufficient motivation, nothing much can happen in the classroom. So the way I see it, one of our most important jobs in the classroom, learning English, is this, that we are able to motivate our students every single day, if that is possible, every single day. I've been saying this for many, many years, and people usually are not very happy when I say this, that English, Suraya, see if you agree with me, English is easy. Please say that you agree with me. English or learning a new language actually is easy.
I don't think so.
You don't think so? Ajahn Chanakant, Ajahn Chanakan, learning
Yes.
English is easy. Do you agree or do you not agree? You can disagree with me. I'm very happy if you
I
disagree
kind
with
of
me.
partly agree. Can
Okay.
I? Because there's some part that is difficult for me too, but
Right,
there's a
right.
part that we can naturally learn. And I speak a little bit of Chinese and Japanese too. When I learn a new language, I kind of, like apply what I do with English.
Right. Yes. Ajahn Chanakan is a very, very smart teacher. He says, I kind of agree, I kind of disagree. But look,
yeah, there's some part.
She has acquired, two very difficult languages like Japanese and Chinese.
Because I love the pop culture of their like music, something like that.
That's what I'm trying to get at. If you
motivation.
Yes, if you have the motivation, if you have the desire, if you have the determination, nothing can stop you.
Yes.
And that's why I keep on saying that learning a language, we're not learning rocket science or anything. We're not learning, advanced mathematics or, whatever, physics or whatever. Language, people, language is easy. If language is difficult, we are in trouble.
It's human's nature.
Yes, exactly. Human beings will probably disappear from planet Earth. Learning, language learning is easy. It's not difficult. If and only if you have the motivation to learn. But often the problem is this. Yeah, I think you can relate to this. Yeah, motivation is important. All people say yes.
University teacher.
Yeah.
School teacher.
Yeah. Okay, this is a this is a question for everyone. Motivation is important, right? Yes.
Own soul.
And the second question is this: I know me. I know how to motivate my students. Answer, please. Yes or no? I know how to motivate my students. Please answer. Yes, no, maybe. Yes. No.
No.
Most people I ask, they don't know how to motivate it. They think they know. This is one area that teachers are struggling, how to motivate their students. And next question is this: my students are motivated? Again, this is a big question that you need to respond. You need to think very carefully. Try to figure out how many of your students are motivated in your classroom. I mean, I'm not being cheeky or anything. Chances are maybe up to 20%. The rest of your students, if they're honest with you, they will tell you that they're not motivated to learn English or to learn anything for that matter. Students today are different from students like, we were in the past. And the next question, very important for you to ask is this: is motivation a student problem or a teacher problem? I want to hear your opinion. Please, go ahead. Is this a student problem or a teacher problem? If you ask Ajahn Chanakan, she will say, it's a little bit of both. Ajahn Chanakan, please say it. A little bit of both.
Anyone in the class have parts to play. I mean, have important roles to play.
Right, yes.
Yes. Nowadays, like with the online classes, I need to put more roles for my student to be an active learner. Because if they are not active, I wouldn't be active as well. I will sleep like them though.
Right, Ajahn Faisa. Yes, very good. Good. Yes, excellent. Ajahn Faisa.
Both. Yeah.
Ajahn Faisa. Same thing.
I agree
both?
with Ajahn Chanakan. Yes. I love my student to be active, and if happen to be I'm active, and then I happen to see or notice my student, like sleepy. So I will act as Yes.
Okay. So, but you haven't answered the question. Is it a student problem?
You are roaming around.
Both, because sometimes I
both?
myself quite
You need to
find
give me that
myself.
certificate in my name. And but I lost my battery. You need to pay. My iPad. You're forcing me to listen.
Ajahn Richa.
Yes, Prof. I
Yes,
think
you raise
the
your hand, yes?
Yeah.
Okay,
I
go
think
ahead.
the teacher needs to be motivated first because she's a teacher and she knows what challenges might come in the classroom through her observation and practice. And if she is motivated, she can find one way or another to motivate the students, even if they are, not motivated as much.
Thank you very much. Yes. Where are you from?
I'm from India, but right now I'm working in Saudi Arabia.
Okay. Very good. Yes. I think we are on the same page here. So this is what happens. This question is a bit tricky. Motivation, a student problem or a teacher problem. If you ask your students and they respond to you honestly, and they will tell you it's a teacher problem. They will tell you that it's because the lessons are not interesting. It's because my teacher is not interesting. I know it's very painful, yeah? But if they answer honestly, that's what they're going to say. But if you ask teachers, the teachers will say, no, it's a student problem, not a teacher problem, because my students are lazy, because my students are, they're not cut out for learning English. They are just don't have the right attitudes for learning English. And that is what I thought too when I was younger. Now that I have a hindsight of reflecting on my own experiences when I was young. When my students are not motivated, I would blame them. It's their fault. Yeah, they're lazy. They're not good students. But now, however, I've become more convinced that when the students are not motivated, it's largely, I need to be very careful here, largely it's our problem because we have not done a good job. Because we have not done a good job teaching our students. I hope you will agree with me, and I hope you will agree with this person as well, Zoltan Donye. He makes a very, very interesting point here. Point number one is this. Point number one stresses the importance of motivation. He's actually saying that with sufficient motivation, you can reach B1 level. That's what he's saying. Yeah, learners with sufficient motivation can achieve a working knowledge of a second language. A working knowledge to me, is like B1. Okay, but not high enough. But for our students, that's already very good, B1 level. Yeah. Now, since motivation is important, I think we should give more attention to the yellow colored boxes there. We need to pay more attention to enhancing the will and the thrill for learning English in the classroom. We should not focus too much on the skill and on the knowledge of learning. I think we've done that for many, many years, and we have not been very successful. I think we have to admit that we have not been very successful because we tend to overteach our students with a lot of things that the students don't need, actually. Now, this is another important point that I've learned. What we've been teaching is also known as in-case teaching. Soraya, translate that into Thai. Just in case teaching. Just in case my students need to use the subjunctive clauses. Just in case the students need to use a mixture of past tense and past perfect tense. Just in case. Just in case.
Yes.
We
are afraid to leave everything. We want to put everything there.
Exactly. And we are good teachers and we follow the syllabus because the syllabus tells us we should cover all these things.
Yes.
Now, do you know what the word cover means? The word cover means to put a cover on things. And if you cover the syllabus, the students can't see the syllabus. The syllabus is hidden. Okay. So I think we need to spend a bit more time, promoting, enhancing, increasing students' desire, students' interest, students' excitement in learning English. Now, here is one last point about motivation. If your students are not motivated, and your students are not motivated, as I said earlier on, maybe 80%, maybe 70% of your students are just only half motivated, and many of them are actually not motivated. If your students are not motivated, what can you do? The teacher from India just now have shared some ideas, and I agree with that. This is what you need to do here. Again, citing one of the top scholars in second language learning motivation, Zoltan Donye. Yeah, Ajahn Faiza, please read this very slowly, using your best voice.
I try my best, Prof.
Yes, please.
The best motivational intervention is simply to improve the quality of our teaching.
Yes, translate that into a simple language. What does it mean actually? I mean serious, yeah, because the word here is improve the quality of our teaching. What does quality mean actually? Because the word quality can mean different things to different teachers and also to different school leaders or stakeholders or the Ministry of Education. What does quality mean? Please tell me. I'm not putting you on the spot. Anyone, please, if you have any thoughts about what does it mean to improve the quality of your teaching?
Thank you.
Yes, you can escape now. Yes, anything?
Is it to maximize student participation and understanding to achieve the desired goal?
Excellent point. That's one thing that you can do, yes. And how do you do that? How do you increase the level and the quantity and the quality of interaction that happens in the classroom? What can you do? What do you need to do in order to have the students to be more engaged? What do you do? What do you need to do? Anything?
We can have activities which are actually related to their interests. Every batch of students have different kinds of interests. So we can find, passages or worksheets which are related to our topic, but also cater to their interests.
Excellent. That's one of the many things that you can do, yeah? And what she just shared is the teaching materials. I like it. Excellent point. Can I see you on the screen? Do you have your camera on? Can you please have your camera on? No, the lady who just spoke. Was it Racha? Yes, Racha. Good to see you. Now I can put a name on the face. Yes, Ratana, you just shared something which is really, really important. That is one aspect where you can, pay attention, where you can improve in terms of its quality, finding relevant materials, interesting materials, exciting materials that the students can relate to. Good, that's one. Is that all? If that is the case, then all you need to do in the classroom is give students materials. That's all. Anything else? I'm having a discussion here.
Perhaps you need to improve your own presentational and motivational skills.
Absolutely. Yes. Your presentation skill, that means your teaching, your delivery, the way you present the information, the way you explain to the students. Do not explain things too seriously, for example. Students don't enjoy listening to a very serious explanation from the teacher. Use simple, easy, relatable language. I think John is saying that, yeah, John, the presentation. And also your own motivation when you walk into the classroom. The first thing the students notice is whether you look happy, whether you look enthusiastic, whether you are motivated as a teacher. If that is not happening, then chances are your students will also not be very interested in what you are doing in the lesson. So look, the materials, yeah. John said the teaching method. John also said the teacher himself or herself will have to be motivating. Anything else? We've got 3 now. More. Come on, people, this is something that you do every day in the classroom. You should know this. What else?
Give them some kind words when they did a great job.
Okay. Yes.
Encouragement.
I like that. Yes.
Yeah, encouragement.
Give more frequent encouragement. Do not punish your students.
We also
have for some reason teachers enjoy punishing, instead of rewarding their students. Give them more rewards.
We also have
if say that reward and punishment work in the same way, why do we go for punishment? Say that these two things work in the same way, have the same effect on your students, but why should we focus on the negative instead of focusing on the positive? Remember, if you focus on the negative, it has a negative effect on your students, number one. It also has a negative effect on you. After you finish teaching, you will feel very unhappy. And when later you arrive home, you will also be feeling unhappy, and you will be scolding your kids and your spouses at home as well. So please focus on the positive. I think that's the way to go.
This is one side of an argument that goes on worldwide and for a long time.
Yeah.
Which is the greater motivator, fear or greed? And actually, I think fear is by far the stronger motivator. It's not very popular amongst educationalists, but in business, management won't change anything until they are scared of a takeover or a penalty.
Yes. I agree. Jonathan, I agree. Yes. Fear is the greatest motivator. But remember, the business
not language teaching. Not in language teaching.
How business
well, I learned more French from a man that I was afraid of than I did from a man I liked when he taught me German. My French is much better than my German.
Okay. Well, yes, I agree that fear is the greatest source of motivation. But look at how the business people use fear in order to motivate you to buy more. They're very smart people, and they use this element of fear. Yeah, like
politicians,
last day of the big sale. The last day will encourage people to just go to the shop and buy everything in the shop. Fear of not being able to enjoy the discounts.
Fear of missing out, huh?
Fear of missing out, exactly. So yes, in language teaching, I think we can use a mixture of fear, but you need to be very careful.
They want their grades. They do want their grades.
They do, yes. So yes, so remember, when the students are not motivated, I think this is my experience, 40 years of experience of working with students and teachers. I think I would put the blame on me. If the students are not motivated, it's me. I need to change.
I agree with that.
Yeah, I need to become better. If I'm not able, I see myself as a failure because, I've not done my best to motivate my students. Well, of course, after having tried the best I can and the students are still not motivated, what do?
Punish them.
Yeah. Either stay on or tell yourself, hey, I've done my best. What else can I do? Yeah. But the key thing, of course, is to ask ourselves, have I done the best I can?
I agree with you. Absolutely.
To motivate our students. If you're looking for some resources, now these two, ebooks are free for you. I'll show you the website address later on. This is from my website, which Ajahn Suraya mentioned early on. My website has a lot of resources and they're all free for teachers. Now, this is something that I've been doing for the past few years, making resources available for people, teachers working in, low resource countries. Okay, the next one, very exciting. But before we move on, I think we need to remember Ajahn Suraya. I hope you remember F is for fluency. L is for Lexis. And then A is for amount and intensity. And then M is for motivation. Yes. Okay, very good. You remember. Which of the four do you think is the most relevant to you?
For me, I think motivation.
Motivation is the most relevant. Very good. Yeah. Okay. Excellent. Next one is in. In stands for input. Input simply means, in the language learning context, it simply means reading, listening, viewing. Yeah, reading, listening, viewing. In other contexts, or if you want to find, an analogy, use an analogy. Input is the diet, the nutrition, language nutrition that the students needs in order to grow. It's nutrition, basically linguistic nutrition. And linguistic nutrition usually comes in the form of reading, listening, and viewing. Yeah, reading, viewing, and listening. Reading, listening, and viewing. Yeah. Now here are some interesting cases. Now these are real cases, people that I have met either personally or people who have been reported in the professional literature. Now people, students, teachers who have been able to develop a very high level of proficiency in the language just by receiving a lot of linguistic nutrition or language input through reading, through listening, or a combination of both, and also through viewing. The first lady here, she was a teenager back then, and she took part in English language competition in Korea, and every time she would win first prize. When she was interviewed, she says that she has read more than 1,000 books, English language books, not the thick encyclopedia type of books, but simple, easy reading materials, novels that she was able to relate to. 1,000. Now, interestingly, Soraya, when the mother was interviewed by the researcher, the mother said something different. The mother said, no, not 1,000. That's not true. In fact, she read 4,000 books. 4,000 books. Who do you believe? The girl or the mother? I think if you have been a mother yourself, then you will probably say that mothers tend to exaggerate. It's the daughter, about 1,000 plus maybe. The other girl here is from Thailand. I met her personally. She was a graduate student at Thammasat University. That's the place where Ajahn Supakon is teaching. And her English was just excellent. You know, she was there, you know, discussing things with the other students in my class, and she just stood up because she was able to present herself, express herself very clearly, very accurately in the English language. And when I asked her, how on earth were you able to develop a very good high proficiency, advanced level of proficiency? In terms of IELTS, it's easily 7.5 or even 8. And she says, that's what I did. I watched a lot of Disney cartoons, movies. Yeah. So the lesson here, if you want your students to also develop a high level of competence in the English language, tell them to watch a lot of cartoons or bring cartoon movies into the classroom. Yeah. Throw away your grammar books. That would be my advice. The grammar book is very, very dangerous. It's very tempting. When you read the grammar books, you can't resist. You cannot resist the temptation. I need to teach these beautiful grammatical structures in the English language. Here is another example. This one is from Vietnam. I know the parents very well. The parents speak English, but they don't speak English at home with their kids. They speak Vietnamese, just like many other Vietnamese parents. And this boy enjoyed doing a lot of reading. His IELTS score was 7, but a year later, he took the IELTS test again, and his speaking score was 8. Here are 2 other examples. These 2 are Ajahns from Indonesia. Their level of proficiency was so high, you know, use the language fluently, and they write also very well in the English language. The theory behind this is the input theory. And Ajahn Ratana is going to help me to read this beautiful quotation from 2 researchers.
Okay.
Ajahn Ratana. Yeah. This
complex and implicit system is not dependent on learner practice of language, but rather is dependent on exposure to what is called input.
Yes. So here is a story. If you are very highly proficient and competent in a language, doesn't matter whether it's first language or second language or third language, if you are highly competent, you must have developed this thing in your head. It's an abstract concept called the linguistic system that allows you to produce, to speak, to read, to write the language very well. Yeah, and researchers have tried to describe this system that you have in your head. And that system is very complex. It's difficult, extremely complex, extremely difficult to describe. The best grammar books in the world, or the best linguistic books in the world, you know, is just scratching the surface of what we actually have in our head, that linguistic system. The key thing to remember is this: complex does not mean difficult. Remember, complex does not mean that the language is difficult to acquire or to learn. Complex means it is a complex system. You can't really describe this system entirely. The other important thing that researchers have found is that this system is implicit. Ajahn Soraya, please say the word implicit 3 times.
Implicit.
3 times. Yes.
Implicit.
Yes, I want you to memorize the word because that word is extremely important. So the linguistic system that we have in our head is implicit in nature. Yeah. And that implicit knowledge comes from where? The answer is there. Ajahn Soraya, the answer is there. Ajahn Soraya is a bit hesitant. The answer is there. Yes.
It's
Input.
Yes, it's the input. And input is reading, input is listening, input is viewing. So if you're not doing a lot of reading, a lot of viewing, a lot of listening in the classroom, then your students will never develop this implicit linguistic system that enables them to reach a high level of competence in the English language. I hope that makes sense, yeah? And this is what the theory says, and this is what I have seen that a lot of people who are really proficient in the language actually have that implicit knowledge of the language. Yeah. Okay, the key thing here to remember is that input is necessary. If you want to live, you have to eat. Basically, that's what it means. In the same way, if you want to learn a new language, you have to receive a lot of linguistic nutrition. It's a necessary condition, but it's not sufficient. Not sufficient means some teaching is going to be needed, and that is where you come in, where we teachers come in. We provide additional teaching to our students because input alone is not enough. In particular, when it comes to writing, input is not enough. Some intervention, some explicit teaching of the language rules, of the discourse conventions may be needed for the students. But the key thing to remember is this, that input is a great acquisition enabler. And I would also say input is a great acquisition extender, and input is also a great acquisition maintainer. Can you say that, John? Maintainer? Never used that word before. Maintainer. Remember I said earlier on about acquiring, extending, and maintaining. If you want to maintain, a language that you learn early on in your life, then that's the best way, through reading, through listening, and through viewing. If you want to know more about this topic, this is an extremely important topic where language learning, language acquisition is concerned. Now, here are 2. Again, free ebooks for you to view and for you to download. The first one, the primacy of extensive reading and listening, basically is about input. What input is important? Why is it important? And why has it been neglected for so many years by teachers? The second one is a special kind of input known as narrow input. Narrow reading, narrow listening, narrow viewing. Basically reading the same kind of materials, reading or listening to the same kind of materials written by the same author, for example. And apparently that kind of reading and listening is extremely useful, especially at the early stage of language acquisition. And this explains why when we were a child, we enjoyed watching something like Sesame Street, for example. Sesame Street is an example of series viewing, or TV series, if you like. And that seems to be very useful for language learning or language acquisition. Okay, next one is grammar. Grammar. Again, I'm going to start by asking you this big question. To teach or not to teach grammar, that is blank. Now you have to fill in the blank. Please choose one answer. Ajahn Faiza, that is or that is not the question. It's a true, basically, it's, whether the choice is or the choice is not.
Is not, Prof.
I like that, yes. It's not the question. You have to teach grammar. The question is when you need to teach grammar, and the question is how much grammar you need to teach your students, yeah? So the question of whether you should or should not teaching grammar is not a question. You have to. As a language teacher, you need to know the grammar of the language. You need to know the grammar of the language really, really well, and you need to teach the grammar. But the question is when and how much. Yeah, extremely important point. But the key message that I want to get across is this: reduce the amount of grammar teaching. I think we've been over-teaching our students. We have not been doing justice to our students. I think we are doing things that do not contribute directly to language acquisition. Oh yes, of course, grammar helps the students pass the big examinations because the examination is usually grammar-based. Yeah, checking, testing students' knowledge of the grammar of the language. Here is somebody who is very well known. The name is Michael Swan. Yeah, he is like the grammarian. His book is widely used in many different places. I can't remember the name of the book. Practical English Usage or something, or Practical Grammar Usage, selling millions of books. That's one of the reasons why people actually, enjoy teaching grammar. But what he says is interesting. Look at what he says. Teach grammar? Yes. He said yes. Teach all grammar rules? No, 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 no. 100% no. What he says is, what he suggests is teach the most useful ones. Now that's the key thing. Teach the most useful ones. Ajahn Amy, useful grammar for learners who are still at the early stage of learning. What kind of grammar is that we need to, whether we consider useful? Ajahn Amy, any thoughts? I think your students are more advanced, yeah? But we are looking at students who are learning to acquire the language.
I think we need to help them to identify the nouns and the verb, because those are the very foundations of
the nouns and the
sentences,
verbs.
yes.
Mm-hmm.
And then eventually we progress to pronouns, prepositions.
Okay.
So it's a gradual introduction.
It's a gradual. Okay. Yes. But what he's saying here is useful grammar. So he is also implying that there are grammar points that are not very useful. He's not suggesting that we should not be teaching grammar in a specific order. He would probably say yes, but he's saying that which of the grammar that we want to teach in that order.
Usually usually we start with like the basic ones.
Right. Yes. Okay. So when you say the basic one, you are saying that the basic one is the most useful one. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, I'm saying that.
Okay. Any other thoughts, please, people? Any other thoughts? Okay. I think what he's trying to say is this: the most useful grammatical structures are those grammatical structures that are most useful, that we often hear, that we often see, that we often need when we want to communicate with other people. So he's not talking about nouns or verbs in particular, but he's talking about things like this. Here are some examples of useful grammatical features, because when you want to communicate with other people, you will need to use at least some of these grammatical structures. You don't need to know whether a sentence has a noun or has an object or has a predicate or has a subject and things like that. That may not be particularly useful. Yeah, maybe mentioning it, in passing is okay. Yeah. So the key point here is for us to really think very carefully which grammatical structures are often used by people in speaking with grammatical structures are often found in easy, simple stories that children usually read. So those will be the basis for us in deciding what grammatical structures that we need to teach. Let me give you an example of grammatical structures that may not be very useful. And the guy who is saying this is me. Because I've seen teachers spending a lot of time teaching, explaining grammatical structures like not only, but also. Had I met you earlier, Ajahn Ratani, I would have visited Bangkok or Phuket more often. Little did I know that it is imperative that every teacher, now these are grammatical structures that you should actually, put aside. I don't think you need, for most high school students, I don't think they need to learn these grammatical structures in detail. They just need to know what it means or what they mean, actually. Other than that, no. The test actually is very simple. Ask yourself this question: how often in your life, in your whole life, how often have you used these grammatical structures in speaking or in writing? The answer is only once in a blue moon. Then maybe this can wait. I mean, these grammatical structures can wait. Yeah, that is point number one. Point number two is at some point in students' language development, I would say at the B1 and slightly at the B2 level, the students will be able to pick up and to learn these grammatical structures on their own. In other words, that is where autonomous learning becomes possible, but not before. Not before. They have to reach at least a certain level of language competence. I'm guessing at the B1 level, when they are able to understand a lot of things, I think they will be able to make sense of these grammatical structures, and they may, if they need to, may be able to use this in some way. Although I doubt that they will be able to use these difficult grammatical structures. I had to spend like one whole semester trying to figure out what it is imperative that every teacher be given a higher salary, for example. But the content is right, nice, huh?
Yes, pretty important to get that one right.
I do agree with that.
Yes, but instead of saying it in this way, you can say that to the minister, hey, Minister of Education, please pay us more. That's easy to say. If you use this grammatical structure, your Minister of Education may not understand this. So, okay, that's grammar, yeah? So the key thing again is, yes, teach grammar. But the question is when and how much. Don't overdo it. I think for many years, we've been over-teaching grammar. The next point here is O. O stands for output. Output is basically speaking. Output refers to writing. Or now people use the word representing, because the word representing includes verbal, includes non-verbal information as well. Nowadays, things are multimodal. So the word representing skill has now been included in the language curriculum. Representing your thought using words, using visuals, using images, using videos and things like that. So always for output. Remember this, yeah? Input is the foundation. Output is the result. Yeah, let me say this again. Acquisition happens when we acquire, when we are exposed, when we are immersed on a daily basis in meaningful, comprehensible language that comes from listening, reading, and viewing. And that is how you build this linguistic system in your head, which is complex and implicit. Yeah, I hope you're with me on that. And then at that point in time, you are about ready to produce the language, to make use language for speaking and for writing purposes. And to be very careful now. It doesn't mean that at the early stage you are forbidding your students from speaking or from writing. I'm not saying that. You can allow the students to do whatever they want, but do not stress on it. Do not put too much stress on speaking and writing. because at some point, the students will produce the language. At some point, the students will need to use the language for communication. So what we need to understand again is the link between input and output. Output is evidence that the students have acquired the language. So output is not causing the language learning to happen. The other way around. Yeah. Now, this is just a few points that I've seen from the professional literature. That output provides feedback, self-feedback, and other feedback when you speak and when your audience is not able to understand you, and that gives you some feedback that, hey, maybe what I said was not very clear. Maybe there was something in my language that was not very accurate, and I need to redo it. I need to rephrase it, and that is how language learning can be further facilitated. Again, that's what the theory says. Output also provides this element of motivation, because eventually students are interested, are motivated to be able to speak, to use the language for real communication. Speaking and writing also has this purpose, allowing students to access what they have learned quickly, fluently, smoothly, and effortlessly. Yeah, so speaking and writing has that function from a language learning perspective. Again, where input is concerned, now these are some of the things that I've seen being discussed in the literature, and I think it makes a lot of sense. That reading and listening allow for the initial learning of the language to happen, and as they continue learning, as the students see and encounter the same words, the same grammatical structures in their reading, in their listening, and in their viewing, they are then able to do a lot of wonderful things in their head, consolidating, restructuring, synthesizing, things that they have learned in the previous day or in the previous week. Yeah. So where output is concerned, my discussion centers mostly on the link between the two. Do not emphasize too much on speaking and writing. When your students are not able to write well, when your students are not able to speak well, it's not because they can't speak well. It's mostly because they haven't had enough linguistic knowledge or linguistic system in their head. Yeah, so that's my take on that issue. So remember this symbol, the yin and the yang. It has to happen in a balance like that. Just one point that I want to highlight here. These days, people are not trying, or teachers are not trying to help our students to develop native-like fluency. I think that idea has largely been, put aside by a lot of people. Instead, we are helping our students. Our main goal should be to help our students develop the ability to express themselves in a way that is comprehensible, understandable, locally, regionally, and also internationally. And I'm happy to say that my language, my English, is comprehensible locally, regionally, and also internationally. Acceptability is another criteria. Depending on what profession you find yourself in, the measure of acceptability can vary a little bit. But just to give you an example of the kind of standard that is required of teachers, for example, I think we would expect our teachers to have a higher standard compared to somebody in the tourism industry, for example. A tour guide can make, quite a bit of mistakes, but teachers are supposed to not make that many mistakes, that many errors in their production. And finally, another important dimension is this. Nowadays, it's not important whether you are speaking like a native speaker or not, but whether you are able to present yourself using the language that you just learned in a way that is believable, in a way that is credible. I think that is, the final goal of somebody who is communicating with other people. Are you a credible speaker? Are you a credible communicator? This is the last one. The last one is S. S stands for set phrases. S here, set phrases are quite similar to our earlier discussion about lexis, about vocabulary. But I want to highlight these very, very important features known as set phrases, also known as lexical bundles, because we are not looking at learning individual words, but looking at words that usually travel together, words that come together. I think that's the reality. You know, we don't usually words individually, but words usually travel together. We say fast food, for example, instead of quick food. That would be an example of set phrases. Let me share with you a story first. Now, this is a real story recounted by a researcher, and the academic paper was published in a very good journal. It's about the experiences of very highly successful learners of English in China. Now, these are students, high school students who are very, very, very competent, very high proficiency. And they are winners, first prize or second prize of National English Language Competition. Remember China, how many billion of people there? It's a lot of people, yeah? If you are good, that means you are very, very good because you are competing with thousands and thousands of other competitors. That's what I said. Remember what I said earlier about practice, practice, practice? Now, these kids also do a lot of practice. What kind of practice do you think? Ajahn Yusuf, what kind of practice? Practice the grammar of the language? Memorizing vocabulary? Ajahn Faisal? Please say no. Please say no. Yes, this is what they practice. Haha. This is what I said earlier on, meaningful practice of listening, meaningful practice of other language skills, yeah? Now, here is what they say when they were interviewed by the researcher. Very, very interesting. I was slow in the beginning. I think you can relate to this. You ask your students and they will tell you, teacher, I can't listen because quickly, please slow down the speed. I was slow in the beginning and I had to listen to it many more times. The key word here is many more times. How many more times? 3 times, 4 times, maybe 5 times. And when you do that 5 times, what's going to happen? Here, I gradually develop some feel for the language. Ajahn Suraya, remember the word that I asked you to memorize early on? 3 times, the word? What was the word again?
Implicit.
Exactly, yes. This girl, of course, does not use the word implicit, but that's what she means. She uses the word feel. Another word for feel is intuition. Yeah, I just use my intuition. Yeah, now this intuition, this feel is known as implicit knowledge of the language. I hope you can see the link there, yeah? And she continues to say, I feel that I just have countless patterns sort of swimming around in my head. Countless. Countless means hundreds, if not thousands. Not individual words, but patterns. Lines, sentences, patterns from movies often naturally pop out. Now, please work with me. Next slide. Here. What does patterns mean? Any thoughts? Multiple choice again. Ajahn Faisal, what does patterns mean? Vocabulary, grammar, or both? Please say both.
Both.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, it's both, because we are looking at word combination. We are looking at word, phrases, actually, fixed phrases, also known as lexical chunks, lexical bundles of formulaic expressions. Now, this is extremely, extremely important. If you are a language teacher, and if you are really concerned about helping your students develop their competence, high level of competence, this is one of the things that you have to spend time helping your students. These are known as lexical chunks. Now, here are some examples. Yeah. And I'm going to show you more examples on the next slide. Here you go. Your ability to say these quickly, effortlessly, without thinking is due to the fact that you have acquired, you have memorized, you have internalized hundreds and thousands of this in your head. Otherwise, you won't be able to communicate fluently. Otherwise, you'll be struggling when you try to express yourself in the English language. Here are more examples here. Again, this is based on research. Research tells us very clearly that competent users of the language, you and me, everyone here in the audience, you have hundreds, thousands of these fixed expressions, the kind of words, the kind of sentences that you can use just like that, quickly, effortlessly. And this is how fluency actually develops. And this is how accuracy also develops. Let me say this very quickly, very slowly. This is the grammar of the language. This is the grammar of language use. It's not the nouns. It's not the plural nouns. It's not the verbs. It's not the clauses. It's not the subjunctive clauses that enable you to speak or to use language fluently, accurately, and coherently. This is it. Fixed phrases. The big question for us is this: where do you get these fixed phrases from? Come on, people, turn on your microphone and tell me, where do you learn this?
I learned in England because I'm English.
Yes.
easy for me and Jonathan. So.
Exactly. Yes. You learn it from hearing it, every day, 24 hours a day, from reading, stories.
It's also authentic language as well.
Absolutely.
Language.
Yes.
It's not made up script. It's not like a script.
Absolutely. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Now the big question again is this, for teachers there in the audience, is it possible for your students to learn all these words, phrases, formulaic expressions, lexical bundles in the classroom? I think that is a big question that we need to answer. Is it possible? Is it possible for the students to learn all this, to acquire this in the classroom? The answer is yes. Thank you, Soraya. It's not possible. It's just not enough time. Yeah. And plus the syllabus does not allow us to provide students with immersive exposure to the language, like Phillips said early on, that you hear, these words, these phrases every day. Yeah. And the only way you can do is to add, to provide, to make changes to your curriculum and to make, integrate, these wonderful new ideas that are catching on at the moment, to implement, to integrate extensive reading and extensive listening in your teaching. And that will add intensity. Remember what I said earlier on, intensity in the classroom and also hopefully outside the classroom, if you are able to get the students to be excited and motivated in, doing the reading and listening on their own. Ladies and gentlemen, I think Soraya is very happy now because that is the last slide. Soraya and everyone in the audience, I think we are going to recite this together. 8 ideas that I've shared with you. Flamingos, yeah? The first F. All of you, please turn on your microphone. F is fluency. Very good. L. Lexical. Very good. Next one is A.
Amount.
Intensity of instruction. And then?
Motivation.
Yes. Next one.
Input.
Then next one. Grammar. Output.
And
phrases. Yeah. You've been a great audience. Again, here are the free ebooks that I mentioned early on, all available in my website. It's Renandya.com. Not just these 4, but there are many other resources that are available.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Good fun.
Suraya.
Yeah, I was a little bit late. I'm sorry. I wanted to ask you, Willy, one thing before you go, if you don't mind.
Yes, go ahead.
Interestingly enough, about using authentic language and using phrases, linking words, and to create the fluency of one of the problems. I'm not so sure if it's like this in Indonesia, but one of the problems that we have at times, not all the time, but at times, I think it's getting better, is what hinders fluency is the losing face.
True.
Concept. Yeah. The fear of making an error.
Yeah.
That's something that's got to change.
Yes.
For the benefit of the students to progress, I think.
Yes.
It's one problem that we not always, but we do have that, at times that it's within the culture.
Yes, I think that is universal, Philip. It's everywhere, not just Indonesia, Thailand, Vietnam, any other places in the world. Okay. That's why the element of motivation, the element of the affective dimension becomes so important in our teaching. Make sure that the classroom is a place where the students feel safe emotionally, cognitively, and also socially. Yeah. If we are able to create that safe environment, I think students will be more willing to make mistakes. In fact, they'll be very happy when they make mistakes, because mistakes
we learn from them.
Yes, exactly. Mistakes are signs that we are learning.
Part of learning.
We just need to, reinforce the idea to the students so that they really understand why mistakes are an important part of learning.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Dr. Willy. That's wonderful. I think we have learned a lot from you, and thank you very much for sharing the very valuable resources from your website as well. I think we are going to visit your website right away after the talk.
Yes.
There are a lot of exciting resources for us to learn from there, right?
Yes.
Okay. And
absolutely.
I think we still have some times for Q&A questions here. And if anyone would like to turn on the microphone and ask Dr. Willy in person, you are very welcome. Or you would like to type in the chat box, that's also very welcome as well.
Yes.
We do have questions. We do have one question earlier, Dr. Willy here. Yep. Is there a linguistic term for viewing? This is from Richard.
I think it's viewing. It's called viewing.
Viewing, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Viewing. Viewing encompasses both reading and also listening. Because nowadays materials are likely to be multimodal. So the word viewing actually now is preferred over listening. So the tradition of using a CD player, for example, I think that should give way to the more video-based multimodal kind of viewing materials today. The reason is very simple. Listening only is extremely difficult. You don't get to see the usual gestures, the usual facial expressions, the usual context. The listening only is very, very difficult. I think we should not do a lot of that kind of listening practice. You need to use video materials today.
Yes. Thank you, Dr. Willy.
Yes.
Yes. Any other questions here? You are very welcome to address Dr. Willy in person directly.
Yes, Faisa, thank you for raising your hand.
Really, Prof?
Oh, no, you didn't raise your hand? You didn't?
Yes. Any other questions from the floor? Yeah. Ajahn Amy asked whether we can have a copy of your presentation.
Ajahn who? Ajahn who? Ajahn Amy.
Ajahn Amy, yes.
Okay, let me ask her first. Have you been a good student just now?
Entirely.
Yes, I'm just kidding. Yes, I will send you a copy.
Really. Yes, of course. I've been a very good student, but my students also message me.
Oh, absolutely. Yes, I will send a copy to Suraya. Ajahn Suraya.
I was paying attention to you, and it was really
and you've been paying
very
attention. Very sweet of
insightful,
you. Yes, very sweet of you.
insightful talk.
Yes, I will make my slides available.
Thank you.
In fact, all my materials are available.
And
so much.
Yeah, including papers that I publish in the Learn Journal. It's a very important journal in Thailand. And Ajahn Supakon is the chief editor of the Learn Journal. Ajahn Supakon, please promote your journal to colleagues here. Yeah. Encourage people to send their papers to your journal.
Could we have those links, Willy, if you don't mind?
Which one?
Any journal links?
Oh yeah, the journal. Ajahn Supakon, please share your journal link.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes, the journal title is Language Education and Acquisition Research Network, or Learn Journal, right? Actually, Ajahn Yusuf and Ajahn Willy published in our journal, right? So you can Google it, and it's going to be probably the first hit in the Google, right? Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yes, I think there are 2 or 3 journals on language education that I know. One is the Learn Journal, Thammasat University. And the other one is PASA, P-A-S-A-A, that's Chulalongkorn University. And there's another one called Reflection or something.
Yes, Reflection.
Yes, all of them are very good journals. They're all indexed in Scopus.
yes, and we do have a question for in the chat box here, Prof.
Yeah.
Yeah, the question is from Afnan. Afnan, would you like to address Prof directly, or would you like me to read it for you here, Afnan?
Yes.
Afnan,
direct question is good.
You may just read it. You may just read it. Thank you.
Okay, great.
Oh, she is so shy.
Afnan, go ahead. I'm not sure whether there is any problem with the microphone.
Okay, so my question is that, is there any relation between the reinforcement and also the motivations? And we know that in order to improve our students' ability, especially in language, in acquiring the language, we as a teacher, is the word reinforcement and the motivation same? Is it the same here?
I think yes, it can be the same. It can be the same because the word reinforcement can mean encouragement. And for me, I would focus more on positive encouragement. Negative encouragement can help sometimes, but I prefer the more positive encouragement. I'm pretty much into reading, new development in psychology, and it's called positive psychology. Wonderful, wonderful piece of knowledge that I think very good for teachers to know more about positive psychology. The idea that when people are happy, when people are, healthy as well, I think they are in a much better position to learn a lot more. When they see things from a positive perspective rather than from a negative perspective, I think students can learn a lot more from our lessons. One of the ideas that I've learned is this, that learning anything is possible if you have these very positive attitudes about yourself. If you have, self-esteem, for example, if you believe that you can do it. That belief is extremely, extremely important. In fact, one book that I would suggest that we all read is a book on psychology by Angela Duckworth. You'll be able to find the book and also the video clip very easily, Angela Duckworth, and the name of the book is Grit, G-R-I-T, Grit. Wonderful book, because the book actually is saying very clearly that success, this is about success is almost anything in life, including, of course, language learning. Success in life does not depend on talent or intelligence, no. Success in life depends on passion, number one, and number two, perseverance. And these two are related. If you have passion, chances are you will pursue, you will try the best you can until you finally reach your goal. So the 2P, passion and perseverance. And the last P is purpose. And purpose is of two kinds. Number one is self. I learn English because I want to. But the other dimension of purpose is other related purpose. Purpose for others. I learn English because I want to teach other people, for example. And that kind of purpose is very, very powerful. So 3 P's.
Yes.
Wonderful.
Not intelligence, not IQ.
Ami raised hand.
Yeah.
We do have another question here, sir, from the floor, from Ajahn Somkiat. Ajahn Somkiat, would you like to address Prof directly, or would you like me to read your question here? Are you here, Ajahn Somkiat? Are you still here?
Yeah. Could you please read the question to me?
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. The question is, what do you think about teaching basic grammar while some of them need to pass the strict grammar test to the university, some of the students? Yes.
I think we can continue doing what we have been doing. I think it's really difficult to change the system. The system requires that we prepare our students for examinations. I think we need to do accordingly. Otherwise, you'll get into big trouble. Yeah. Otherwise, you'll lose your job. But at the same time, I think we also need to give students opportunities to grow, to develop their language proficiency, their language competence. In today's world, competence in English is a big plus. It will open doors for our students. They can do a lot of things. They can read a lot of information from the internet, because that is a source of knowledge these days, is the internet. And the majority of information that is available on the internet is written in English. And number two, with just that knowledge and skill in English, I think you can find a lot of jobs. A lot of jobs, either locally and also regionally, and also internationally as well. So the answer to that is yes, continue doing whatever you've been doing. I think that it makes sense, yeah? Or you'll get into big trouble with your boss. But at the same time, make sure that you add additional something that is exciting, that is interesting, how you can build your students' foundation and proficiency in the English language by allowing the students to be immersed in rich language, in rich, authentic language. And I've seen no one who spend a great deal of students who spend a great deal of reading and listening who are disadvantaged when it comes to examination. I have not seen anyone. In fact, they tend to do much, much better on any kinds of examinations, whether it's TOEFL, IELTS, or school examinations. Philip. Yes.
Yes, thank you. What's your sentiment? So how do you feel about, because obviously I don't want to insult anybody here. If anybody's from my generation and they were fortunate to grow up without a mobile phone, hence the fact that we could hold conversations, do you think then that IT, as in mobile cell phones, whatever which way you call them, do you think that's killing socialization? And do you think that's a hinder? Is that interrupting people to progress in language learning, or do you think it's helping? When you see all the students sitting around the table, all looking at the phones and not even talking to each other, that's a scenario.
Okay, here is what I've seen from research and also from my own experience. Research actually tells us that technology alone does not improve language learning, but it is when technology is used in conjunction with what is known about the principles of language acquisition, then it helps. And what are some of the principles of language acquisition? I just shared with you the flamingos, basically. some of the most important principles of language acquisition. Now, imagine this. Think about this. What is your generation, Phil? Are you my generation?
I wouldn't want to go there. I'm the baby boomer before 65.
Okay, the baby boomers, yes, I can relate to that. 30 years ago, it was extremely difficult to find resources, to find reading materials or listening materials in English. It was very difficult. There was some, but either the materials are not very interesting or they're available in very limited amount. I remember that time very clearly. But today, I think we are just inundated with a lot of information, with a lot of materials that we can use as a basis for developing language proficiency. In fact, I've seen a lot of people who develop their proficiency even without attending formal instruction. Or if they do, they would say that, well, the things that I learned in school is not very helpful for me. And I've seen a lot of examples like that, just by being immersed to the language. So that is one thing. The other thing is, again, based on research, technology alone does not actually improve language learning a great deal, except in two areas. Number one, pronunciation. Yeah. Technological tools is wonderful tool for people, for students to be able to increase on the accuracy of their pronunciation. They can keep on practicing on their own using very simple applications, which are now widely available for free to improve on their ability to express themselves more clearly and more accurately. The other one is it increases the amount of talk. Phil, I think somebody asked a question early on that students are usually not very forward, not very convenient, not very comfortable speaking, using the language that they have just learned. And technology, I think, provides that platform because students can hide behind the machine, behind the tool, and they feel more free to produce the language, usually in writing. And that is, again, one piece of research that shows that the amount of language use, the output bit of language learning, I think increases a great deal. Yeah.
Do you think it helps acquisition then, to acquire the language? Do you think it is actually?
Oh, absolutely. Yes. Yes, absolutely. But if and only if the students know how to use it. Yeah. If they just, if they just, check their Facebook, messages and then Twitter messages, I don't think that helps a great deal because they are dealing with, what is known as disjointed discourse. Disjointed discourse is bits and pieces of information. They're not connected. But reading a story from a mobile phone is different because the discourse is complete. The text is complete. It has all the ingredients. It has all the normal grammatical features that we usually find in other, in non-digital format. So the answer is yes. And later, 5-10 years down the road, I think we will be seeing newer developments in technology in the form of artificial intelligence. That future is getting very, very near. And that can be a great enabler for language learning purposes. But the way we teach then will be very, very different from what we do now because AI, even the beta version of the newer AI programs, can already produce a story. Not perfect, but it can produce a story. Now, what it means is whether we should abandon AI or we should capitalize on AI. I think the answer is we should capitalize on AI. Just like when the calculator was created, we tried to ban calculator in the classroom, but that doesn't seem to help. What we need to do is to teach the higher level kind of story creation, for example. So the initial drafting can be done by AI, but the next step of refining, making the text more reader-friendly, for example, making the text more refined, more culturally sensitive, for example, and that is something that teachers can do. That's something that human beings can do, perhaps better than the machine. Thank you so much for your question, Phil.
Yeah, thank you for your explanation as well. Very insightful. Cheers.
Cheers.
If it looks as if I'm lying down, by the way, I actually am. I've just come out of hospital after major surgery, so I'm just resting on my tummy. So you have to excuse if I'm looking at an odd angle. So I do apologize.
Not a problem. I hope you get better soon. I hope you get better soon. Yeah.
Oh, yes, I'm happy.
Yeah. You're based in Thailand?
I'm at the Phuket, Princess Songkla Phuket campus. I've been here just over 12
Phuket
years.
campus with Ajahn Ratana then?
Yes, absolutely. I know her very well.
Okay.
I
Yeah,
think she's online.
Yeah.
No, thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. So any other questions here from the floor?
I have a question for Dr. Willy.
Yes.
Yes. Doctor,
can you turn on your video, please?
My
oh,
video
that's you. Yes. Yeah, I see you. Amy, yeah?
It's Amy, yes.
Yes, Amy, yeah.
I would just like to ask if you have considered working on a research work wherein you consider thinking in a language as one of the skills. Thinking as one of the skills in order to learn a language. I have encountered before, I had a student in the US who was learning a language, vocabulary, because they were asked to learn as many vocabulary as possible and as many words as possible. And they made an illustration to define the word and then illustrate the word, use the words in sentences and use the word and the synonyms.
Yeah.
Okay. Now my point is the illustration of that word is some sort of, using your imagination or thinking about it or visualizing it, which is part of the thinking process, correct?
Yeah.
All right. So is thinking an important part or an important skill in learning a language?
The answer is yes. For vocabulary learning, there are two types. Number one is explicit, systematic learning of the language, where your thinking is focused on the form of the word, the meaning of the word, and the usage of the word. And in order to help you remember a new word, you may want to add images, for example. You may want to create sentences and other related things. This is known as explicit and systematic learning, acquisition of vocabulary. And this is the kind of things that we all do in the classroom, basically. Explicit learning of vocabulary. Is that a good thing? The answer is yes, it is a good thing. But you also need to give students opportunity to see the words again and again in many, many different and meaningful contexts. Because individual learning of the words is good, but quite limited. There's no way you can see how the words are behaving or how the words are actually used in multiple contexts that the word is likely to be used by other people. So what I'm saying is that we need to use both explicit and also implicit learning of the language. That's a technical term that people use. People don't use the word thinking about the words, because thinking about the words is something else. Basically in the context of teaching literature, for example, then that's a different way of looking at vocabulary. But from a language learning perspective, there are two types: explicit and implicit. I think we need to do both. A little bit of explicit, but more on implicit.
Implicit.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Let me share with you, maybe as a closing. Again, let me refer back to Paul Nation. He's a great guy. I think he is the one who is consistently thinking about most important ideas that relate more directly to language learning, language acquisition, in particular EFL, English as a foreign language situations. And he came up with these ideas, 4 things that we need to think about very carefully when we teach language. Number one, a quarter of the time will have to be devoted to providing students with a lot of meaningful language input. There you go, the input. Second one, providing another quarter of the time to help the students to produce the language in a meaningful way. So the input and output connection, basically. The third one, another quarter, is for us to focus on the structure, the grammar, the form of the language. Now, this includes grammatical structure, this includes vocabulary as well, and pronunciation and spelling. The form of the language refers to all these wonderful things that are often the target of our teaching. But he says a quarter of the time, 1/4. The last one, guess what the last one is? Another quarter? Suraya, please say fluency. Suraya? Fluency. Yes, this is what you do in the classroom, yeah? Do not make your students feel bad because they don't know the answer. Tell the answer, give the answer to your students. The last one is fluency. And you'll be surprised why fluency occupies a quarter. The answer is very simple. Language learning is about developing skill. It's a skill development. And if you want to be good in any kind of skill, you need practice. You need to develop that fluency. If you want to be able to cook the best tom yum kung in the world, I think you need to spend a lot of fluency activities. Do it in like 10 or 20 different ways, 20 times, and you'll become the best, chef, on tom yum kung. So
it's almost like, I just say, Willy, it's almost as if you need to know the ingredients to produce the dish.
Absolutely.
Almost.
Yes.
That sort of analogy.
Yes. Of course, yes. Yes, the four things, a quarter each. But then it's a bit tricky. A quarter each doesn't mean that, okay, this semester, this quarter, 1 quarter, another semester, 1 quarter. No, because language learning is very dynamic. At the early stage, if you ask me, I would focus on fluency and input. Gradually, maybe in the later years, year 2, maybe year 3, then maybe a bit more focus on form, more grammar, more vocabulary, more explicit attention to pronunciation, for example, but not at the early stage. The early stage is the time when the students need to build that important language foundation. Or in a technical term, we want the students to be able to build that implicit linguistic system in their head. So that will be my closing remark for today.
Thank
Suraya,
you.
yes, Suraya, back to you. Please summarize the whole talk in 20 minutes.
Okay, thank you very much, sir. This is really fruitful. I think today is a really fruitful discussion, and I feel really honored to have you with us today, and I feel very happy that our participation, I think our everyone in the panels are very happy with the discussion today, and we have learned a lot from you. I think we are very motivated now to go back to the class and bring so many techniques that we have learned today back to our class. Yeah, so I think that's wonderful, and we are very, very honored to have you with us, and thank you so much for your valuable time that you have spent with us twice already, and we hope that next time we are going to have you again with us in
actually, Ajahn Suraya, yes, we are going to meet Ajahn Willy again next year for the next session.
Yes, definitely. Yeah, thank you. Okay, so yep, just to remind you here that we are having the evaluation form there. So Ajahn Yusuf have already put it there in the chat box. So please help us evaluate the session today, because your feedback would help us improve our event for the better. And then I would like to share the screen a bit here for the next session that we are going to have with you. Let me go there. Yeah. Yes. So next time, yeah, on the 18th of December, we are going to have a event, and this is going to be another exciting and very innovative way of teaching English. This is to how to master English with music. So this is from Dr. Maritza from Mexico. So I hope that everyone would join us again on the 18th of December. And for today, I think we have spent our valuable time together, and hopefully that we are coming back again next year, right, Dr. Willy, for your session?
Yes, next year. Give me the date and time.
Okay. Okay, so for today, we have got to end our session here, and thank you, Dr. Willy, again for your sharing and for your experience, and thank you everyone for your fruitful discussion of today's session. And see you again next time on the 18th of December, and have everyone have a healthy life now, and keep yourself safe from the pandemic. And yes, that's it for today. And thank you. And we have got to say goodbye here.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dr. Willy.
Thank you. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
See you next.
Thank you. Enjoy the rest of the day.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ajahn Willy.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ajahn Yi.
Dr. Willy. Thank you, everyone. See you
Thank
again.
you, Suraya. Nice job.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Ajahn Willy. Hope to see you again next year.
Yeah, see you again next year. Bye now.